The rain pounded my windshield like a drumbeat, relentless and cold, as I steered my old sedan toward the Turner estate. My name's Ellie Green, and I've always been drawn to the kids everyone else gives up on. With a degree in child psychology and 5 years working with children from broken homes, I thought I'd seen it all: tantrums, defiance, hearts shattered by loss or neglect. But when the Peden Nanny agency called about the Turner job, even I felt a twinge of hesitation. I was to be the 12th nanny hired to care for 8-year-old Ivy Turner, daughter of billionaire CEO James Turner. The agency's warning was blunt: no one had lasted more than 3 weeks. "She's impossible," Mrs. Peden, the agency's director, had told me, her voice tight with frustration. "Spoiled beyond saving. 11 nannies have walked out of that house in the last 18 months. Ellie, you're our last shot. But I'm warning you, this kid will break you." I gripped the steering wheel, the wipers barely keeping up with the downpour. "What makes her so tough?" I'd asked during our call, curiosity outweighing my nerves. Mrs. Peden's answer was a grim litany. Ivy threw paint at nannies, hid their belongings, even called 911 once, claiming a nanny was kidnapping her. She'd smashed toys, flipped furniture, and screamed until her throat gave out. Her father's at the end of his rope, Mrs. Peden said. He's a busy man, always jetting off for business. And the mother? She paused, her tone softening. She passed away 2 years ago. Cancer. It's just Mr. Turner and Ivy now. The puzzle pieces snapped together as I turned onto the private road leading to the estate. A little girl who'd lost her mom. A dad burying his grief in work. No wonder Ivy was unraveling. I'd worked with grieving kids before, and I knew their chaos often hid a deeper pain. "I'll take the job," I'd told Mrs. Peden without missing a beat. She'd sighed, almost pityingly. "Ellie, this girl's made grown women cry. The pay's great, Mr. Turner's desperate, but the emotional toll." I cut her off. "I've seen kids like this. Sometimes the worst behavior comes from the deepest hurt." As I pulled up to the Turner estate, the rain eased to a drizzle, revealing a mansion straight out of a storybook. Towering iron gates stood like sentinels, flanked by hedges glistening under the stormy sky. The circular driveway could have parked a fleet of cars. And the house itself was a maze of stone and glass, its windows catching the clouds like dark mirrors. But I wasn't here for the opulence. I was here for Ivy. James Turner opened the door himself, which threw me. He was younger than I'd pictured. Late 30s, with dark hair streaked with early gray and eyes shadowed by sleepless nights. "Miss Green," he said, his handshake firm but distracted. "Thanks for coming. I'm not holding my breath. But Mrs. Peden swears you're the best." His voice carried the weariness of a man who'd stopped believing in solutions. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Turner," I replied, offering a smile he didn't return. "I'm looking forward to meeting Ivy." He led me through a foyer that felt more like a cathedral, past a living room that looked untouched, like a stage set for a life no one lived. We reached a family room with traces of humanity, crayon drawings taped crookedly to the fridge, books scattered on a coffee table, a basket of toys by a leather couch. "Ivy," he called up a sweeping staircase, his voice edged with tension. "Come meet Miss Green." The reply came fast and fierce, cutting through the quiet. "No, I don't want another stupid nanny. Tell her to get lost." Mr. Turner's jaw tightened, his face a mix of frustration and shame. "I'm sorry," he muttered. "She's been like this since her mother died. I've tried everything: therapy, discipline, rewards, consequences. Nothing works." I studied him, noting the slump of his shoulders, the way his hands twitched like he was searching for something to fix. "How long was she in therapy?" I asked. 6 months, he said, but she wouldn't talk, just sat there or threw fits. The therapist said it was pointless if she wouldn't open up. I nodded, tucking that away. "Mr. Turner, can I go up to meet her? Kids sometimes do better in their own space." He raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "You can try." But she dumped a whole bottle of shampoo on the last nanny. Soaked her. I climbed the staircase, my boots soft on the thick carpet, following the sound of furniture being shoved across the floor. The hallway was lined with family photos. A silent story of loss. Early pictures showed a radiant blonde woman, likely Ivy's mother, laughing with a younger Ivy and James, their faces glowing with happiness. Later photos were just father and daughter, their smiles strained, their eyes empty. At the end of the hall, I found Ivy's room. The door closed tight. Inside, I heard thuds and scrapes, like a small storm brewing. I knocked gently. "Go away," came the instant shout, sharp and defiant. "Hi, Ivy," I said, keeping my tone calm. "I'm Ellie. I'm not here to make you do anything. I just want to say hi." Silence. Then another yell. I said, "Go away. I don't want another stupid nanny." I leaned closer to the door, careful not to push. "That's okay. You don't have to want me here. Can I ask you something, though?" A pause. Then a grudging, "What?" I smiled to myself. "What happened with the last nanny? The one with the shampoo?" A stifled giggle slipped through the door. "She was mean," Ivy said, her voice quieter but wary. "She called me a brat and said my mommy would be ashamed of me." My heart twisted. No wonder this girl was fighting the world. That was an awful thing to say. I said firmly, "Your mommy would never be ashamed of you." "How do you know?" Ivy snapped, her tone sharp again. "You didn't even know her." "You're right. I didn't," I admitted. "But I know mommies love their kids no matter what. Even when they're gone." Silence hung heavy. Then, softly, "Are you gonna make me clean my room and eat vegetables and go to bed early? Is that what the other nannies did?" I asked. "Yeah," she muttered. "And they said I had to stop being sad about mommy because it was upsetting daddy." Anger flared in my chest. But I kept my voice steady. "Ivy, can I tell you a secret?" A beat. "What?" "I think being sad about your mommy makes total sense. I'd be sad too if my mommy wasn't here." "Really?" Her voice was a whisper. "Really. I was so sad when my mommy died. I was 16, older than you, but it still hurt like crazy." The door creaked open a sliver, and I glimpsed dark hair and wide brown eyes peering out. "Your mommy died too?" she asked, her voice trembling with doubt and hope. "She did," I said softly, "and even now, 10 years later, I still miss her." The door opened wider, revealing Ivy Turner, a small girl with her father's dark hair and delicate features that must have come from her mother. She wore a faded princess dress, its hem frayed from wear. But before I could say more, her face twisted with suspicion. "I don't believe you," she hissed, her voice spiking. "You're lying. Just like the others. You're just trying to make me like you." She snatched a ceramic figurine from her dresser and flung it at me. I ducked, and it shattered against the wall, pieces scattering like fragments of her broken trust. The shattered figurine lay in pieces on the floor, a jagged testament to Ivy's rage and mistrust. Her small frame trembled in the center of the room, her brown eyes wild with a mix of fury and fear. "I hate you," she screamed, grabbing a book from her nightstand and hurling it toward me. It sailed past my shoulder, pages fluttering like wounded birds before it thudded against the wall. "I hate all of you. I want my mommy." A stuffed animal followed, then a picture frame, its glass cracking as it hit the floor. Her voice broke into a raw, guttural sob, the kind that comes from a place so deep it feels like it could swallow her whole. I heard footsteps pounding up the staircase. Mr. Turner, no doubt, alerted by the chaos. He appeared in the doorway, his face pale, his tie loosened as if he'd been tugging at it in frustration. He opened his mouth to speak, but I held up a hand, signaling him to wait. Slowly, carefully, I stepped into the room, avoiding the debris, and sat cross-legged on the floor about 6 feet from Ivy. Not close enough to crowd her, but close enough to show I wasn't running away. Her sobs quieted slightly, though she kept her face buried in her hands, her dark hair falling like a curtain. "Ivy," I said softly, my voice steady despite the storm she'd unleashed. "I know you don't believe me right now. And that's okay. You're right, people have probably lied to you before, made promises they didn't keep. I can't know exactly what it's like to be you, or to lose your mommy at 8. But I do know what it's like to feel so angry and sad that you want to break everything around you." She peeked at me through her fingers, her eyes red and wary. When my mom died, I continued, I was so mad at the world. I yelled at my dad. Told my teachers I hated them. Even broke things that mattered to him. Once, I smashed his favorite coffee mug against the wall because I was so angry that he was acting like everything was normal when nothing would ever be normal again. Ivy lifted her head slightly, wiping her nose on the sleeve of her tattered princess dress. Did you get in trouble? She asked. Her voice small but curious. Oh, yeah, I said with a soft laugh. But you know what my dad did? He didn't yell back. He said, I get why you're angry. Ellie, I'm angry too. But let's find something that's okay to break so you don't hurt yourself or ruin something we can't replace. Ivy's eyes widened, a flicker of intrigue breaking through her defenses. He gave me a box of old dishes we didn't need anymore. I went on. Whenever I felt like breaking something, I'd take one outside and smash it against the fence. It didn't fix the pain, but it helped to get the anger out. She glanced around her room, taking in the chaos she'd created, broken figurine shards, scattered toys, a chair tipped over in the corner. I made a big mess. She whispered, her voice heavy with guilt. You did, I said, nodding, but messes can be cleaned up. And you know what? I think you needed to make this mess. I think you needed to show me how much you're hurting. Her gaze met mine, searching, as if trying to decide whether I was another adult who'd leave when things got tough. You're not mad? She asked. Not at all, I said. You're not a brat, Ivy. You're a little girl who misses her mommy so much that sometimes the feelings get too big to hold. For a long moment, she just stared at me. Then, quietly, she said, will you help me clean it up? Of course I will, I replied, my heart swelling, as we began picking up the scattered toys and righting the furniture. I felt Mr. Turner's eyes on us from the doorway. His expression was unreadable, a mix of shock and something softer, hope. Maybe. When Ivy found the broken pieces of the ceramic figurine, her face crumpled, and fresh tears spilled over. I broke Mommy's ballerina, she said, clutching a fragment. She gave it to me before she died. And now it's ruined. I knelt beside her, touching the broken piece gently. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. That must feel awful. I break everything good, she said, her voice barely audible, defeated. No, you don't, I said firmly, placing a hand on her shoulder. You broke one thing when your feelings got too big. That doesn't mean you break everything good. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with doubt. What if I break you too? My throat tightened, but I kept my voice steady. Ivy, people aren't like figurines. We don't break that easily. And even if we get hurt, we can heal, I promise. I picked up another piece of the ballerina. And you know what? Maybe we can fix this too. Sometimes broken things can be put back together in a way that makes them even more special. Okay, she said, her voice trembling but hopeful. As we worked, I noticed the room's strange layout for the first time. Ivy had pushed all her furniture, her bed, dresser, toy chest, against the walls, leaving the center of the room starkly empty. It was like she'd built a fortress, a barrier to keep the world at bay. This is a really creative setup, I said, meaning it. You made your own special space in the middle. She sat cross-legged in the empty center, her small hands picking at the carpet. The other nanny said it was messy and made me put it back. She said, well, I think it's interesting. I replied, why did you want it this way? She hesitated, then spoke in a near whisper. Because when everything's pushed away, nothing can fall on me or break or disappear. The weight of her words hit me like a punch. This wasn't just a child rearranging furniture. It was a desperate attempt to control a world that had taken so much from her. That makes so much sense, I said, sitting across from her in the empty space. When things disappear, it's scary. Mommy disappeared, she said matter-of-factly, her voice hollow. Daddy says she went to heaven. But I think she went away because I was bad. My heart broke for her. This little girl carrying a guilt no child should bear. Oh, Ivy, no, I said, leaning forward. Your mommy didn't go away because you were bad. She got sick. And sometimes when people get very sick, their bodies stop working, even if they don't want to leave. Her eyes searched mine, desperate for truth. But if I'd been better, Maybe she would have tried harder to stay. Tears pricked my eyes, but I held her gaze. When my mom died, I thought it was my fault too. I thought if I'd been a better daughter, helped more, told her I loved her more, she wouldn't have gotten sick. But it wasn't my fault. And it took me a long time to learn that. Mommies don't die because their kids are bad. They die because sometimes bodies get sick in ways doctors can't fix. No matter how much love there is. Ivy picked at the carpet, silent for a long time. Then she said, "The other nanny said I should stop thinking about mommy and focus on being good for daddy." I think that was a dumb thing to say, I replied, letting a hint of indignation slip into my voice. You should never stop thinking about your mommy. Thinking about people we love keeps them close. Even when they're gone. Her eyes lit up, a spark of relief breaking through. Really? Really? I said. Do you want to tell me about her? What was she like? For the next hour, Ivy opened up, her voice soft at first but growing stronger. She told me how her mom made pancakes in funny shapes, hearts, stars, even a lopsided dinosaur once. How she'd read 3 bedtime stories instead of 1. Doing all the voices. How she smelled like lavender and always knew what to say when Ivy was scared. She used to brush my hair every night, Ivy said, touching her tangled locks. 100 brushes. She said it'd make it shiny like a princess's. That sounds so special, I said. Do you still brush your hair? She shook her head. Daddy tries, but he's not good at it. The nannies just pull it into a ponytail to get it out of the way. Would you like me to brush it? I offered. I could try to do it like your mommy did. Her face lit up, a real smile breaking through for the first time. You'd do that? Of course, I said. Let's get your brush. As I gently brushed her hair, counting aloud to 100. I felt the tension in her small body ease. This wasn't just about entangling knots. It was about honoring her mother's memory. Showing Ivy that the rituals she cherished still mattered. When I finished, she turned to me, her eyes softer now. Ellie, are you gonna leave like the other nannies? I'm gonna try really hard to stay. If you'll let me, I said. What if I'm bad? What if I throw things again? Then we'll figure out why you're upset and find better ways to handle those big feelings. I'll never call you a brat. Ivy, you're a girl who misses her mommy. And that's okay. As I finished brushing Ivy's hair, the room felt quieter, as if the air itself had softened. Ivy sat still, her small hands folded in her lap, the ghost of a smile lingering on her face. The photo album of her mother lay open on the bed beside us, its pages worn from countless viewings. Mr. Turner stood in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the warm glow of the hallway light. He hadn't spoken since he'd arrived, but his eyes followed us, wide with something I hadn't seen in him before, wonder, maybe, or the faint stirrings of hope. Daddy, Ivy said suddenly, hopping off the bed and rushing to him. Ellie's mommy died too, just like mine, and she says it's okay to be sad and think about mommy. His gaze flicked to me, a question in his eyes, and I nodded slightly, encouraging him to engage. Is that so? He said, kneeling to her level, his voice rough with emotion. What else did Ellie tell you? Ivy climbed onto his lap, something I suspected she hadn't done in a long time. She said I'm not a brat, she declared, her tone matter of fact. Even when I'm mad or break stuff. She says it's because I miss mommy, not because I'm bad. Mr. Turner's face tightened, a flicker of guilt crossing his features. He glanced at me again, and I saw the weight of realization settle over him. He'd been so consumed by his own grief and his empire of boardrooms that he'd missed the depth of his daughter's pain. Ivy, he said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You're not a brat. I'm sorry if I ever made you feel that way. She looked at him, her big brown eyes searching his face. You're not mad at me for breaking mommy's ballerina? He shook his head, his throat working as he swallowed hard. No, sweetheart, I'm just glad you're talking to someone. He looked at me over her head, his expression raw. Thank you, Ellie. She's never let any of the other nannies see those photos. I smiled, feeling the warmth of their moment but knowing we had a long road ahead. She's got a lot to share, I said, and she's got a lot of love for her mom that needs a place to go. Ivy leaned against her father, pointing to a picture in the album, A candid shot of her mother laughing. Her blonde hair catching the sunlight as she pushed Ivy on a swing. Mommy used to take me to the park every Saturday. She said. She'd push me so high I thought I could touch the clouds. Mr. Turner's eyes glistened, but he didn't look away. She loved those days with you, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. She'd come home and tell me you were braver than any kid she knew. Over the next few weeks, I settled into a routine with Ivy that was unlike anything the previous nannies had tried. Instead of forcing rules or schedules, I focused on giving her space to process her grief. We created a memory box for her mother. A small wooden chest we painted together with stars and flowers, her mom's favorites. Ivy filled it with treasures. A pressed daisy from a walk they'd taken. A note her mother had written for her lunchbox. A tiny bottle of lavender perfume that still carried her scent. Each item was a tether to her mother. A way to hold on to love without drowning in loss. We also planted a garden in the backyard. A patch of earth where we sowed forget-me-nots and lilies. Flowers Ivy said her mom had loved. She'd like this, Ivy said one afternoon, her hands caked with dirt as she patted the soil around a seedling. She'd say it's like making a promise to the earth. But it wasn't just about honoring her mother's memory, it was about giving Ivy tools to navigate her emotions. One evening, after a small meltdown over a broken crayon, I sat her down. It's okay to be angry, I said, handing her a sketchpad, but instead of throwing things. What else could you do with that feeling? She frowned, thinking, I could tell you I'm mad. That's a great start, I said. What else? I could draw something angry, she said, her eyes lighting up, like a dragon breathing fire. Perfect, I said, grinning. Or you could punch a pillow. Or run laps in the yard. Or do jumping jacks. There are lots of ways to let the anger out without hurting anyone or breaking something important. The tantrums didn't vanish overnight. But they grew less frequent. Less explosive. More importantly, Ivy started coming to me when she felt overwhelmed instead of bottling it up until it erupted. One afternoon, she found me in the kitchen, where I was slicing apples for a snack. Ellie, she said, her voice small, I'm sad about Mommy today. I set the knife down and sat at the table with her. Thank you for telling me. Do you know what's making you feel extra sad? She nodded, twisting a napkin in her hands. At school, Sarah said her mom's coming to the talent show next week. And I remembered Mommy can't come to mine. Ever. Her voice cracked, and I reached for her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. That must have been really hard to hear. I said. It was, she admitted. I wanted to push Sarah. But I remembered what you said about angry feelings. So I came to you instead. I'm so proud of you for that, I said, my heart swelling. What would help right now? Want to look at a picture of your mom at one of your shows? She nodded, and we pulled out the photo album, finding a shot of her mother clapping at Ivy's kindergarten play, her face glowing with pride. She was so happy that day, Ivy said, tracing her mother's smile with her finger. She said I was her little star. You still are, I said, and she's still cheering for you. Even if you can't see her. Ivy leaned against me, and for the first time, I felt her trust, not just in me, but in the idea that she could feel her grief without it swallowing her. The real breakthrough came 6 weeks later, when Mr. Turner returned from a business trip. He walked into the kitchen on a Friday evening, his suitcase still in hand, and froze at the sight before him. Ivy stood on a step stool, carefully stirring a pot of vegetable soup, her tongue poking out in concentration. I was beside her, chopping carrots, while she chattered about her day at school, a story about a book she'd read and a picture she'd drawn of a dragon. Daddy, she called when she saw him. But instead of running to him, she turned back to the stove. I gotta keep stirring, or the soup'll burn. Ellie's teaching me to cook. Mr. Turner stood in the doorway, his briefcase slipping from his hand to the floor. She's cooking, he said, almost to himself, his voice thick with disbelief. We've been working on life skills, I explained, wiping my hands on a towel. Cooking, cleaning, taking care of herself, it gives her a sense of control. He looked around the kitchen, which was messy but intact, no broken dishes, no overturned chairs, no tantrum. he said, his eyes meeting mine. No chaos. Ivy piped up, still stirring. Daddy, I'm a good girl. Well, sometimes I'm not, but mostly I am. Ellie says when I feel like having a tantrum, I should tell her what's wrong instead. Is that right? He said, his voice soft as he stepped closer. And what else did Ellie teach you? She said it's okay to miss mommy. Ivy replied, her tone serious. And that missing mommy doesn't mean I can't be happy sometimes too. Mr. Turner's face softened, and I saw the relief wash over him. Like a man who'd been holding his breath for 2 years and could finally exhale. Ellie, he said quietly as Ivy focused on her soup. Can we talk after dinner? I'd like to hear more about Ivy's progress. Of course, I said, feeling the weight of his gratitude. And thank you, Mr. Turner. This is the most peaceful I've seen this house since I started. Ivy glanced up from her soup. Her eyes bright. It's okay to say it. Daddy, Ellie says talking about sad things makes them less scary. Mr. Turner nodded, his expression a mix of awe and sorrow. You're right, sweetheart. You're absolutely right. After dinner that evening, as Ivy played upstairs with her newly organized toys, Mr. Turner and I retreated to his study. The room was dimly lit by a desk lamp, casting long shadows over shelves lined with business books and family photos, reminders of a life interrupted. He poured himself a glass of scotch, offering me one, which I declined, and sank into a leather armchair, looking more vulnerable than the billionaire CEO the world knew. Ellie, he said, swirling the amber liquid, I need to know, what did you do that the other 11 nannies couldn't? How did you reach her? His voice cracked slightly, revealing the cracks in his polished facade. I sat across from him, choosing my words carefully. I listened to what her behavior was really saying, instead of just trying to stop it. Ivy wasn't spoiled or undisciplined, she was drowning in grief and guilt that no one had addressed. He leaned forward, his brow furrowed. Guilt? She blamed herself for her mother's death. I explained gently. She thought if she'd been a better kid, her mom would have fought harder to stay. Mr. Turner's face drained of color, his glass trembling in his hand. She never told me that. He whispered, his eyes distant, as if replaying every interaction he'd had with her since the loss. Kids often don't have the words for those feelings. I said, they show them through actions, the tantrums, the pushing people away. It was her way of screaming for help. He set the glass down, rubbing his temples. We tried therapy. Sometimes kids aren't ready for it right away. I replied, they need to feel safe first. Ivy needed someone to validate her pain, to show her grief is normal, not something to rush past. He stared out the window at the darkening garden, where the flowers Ivy and I had planted swayed in the evening breeze. I failed her, didn't I? His voice was raw, laced with self-reproach. You didn't fail her, I said firmly. You were grieving too, and you did what you could. But Mr. Turner, Ivy isn't the only one who needs to process this. He turned back to me, his eyes narrowing. What do you mean? When was the last time you talked about your wife? When did you let yourself grieve instead of burying it in work? He laughed bitterly, a sound that echoed hollowly in the room. I don't have time for grief. I have a company to run, a daughter to raise, but ignoring it doesn't make it go away. I countered. It just builds up, and kids pick up on that. Ivy senses you're avoiding your pain, so she thinks she has to avoid hers too. He was silent for a long moment. The tick of a wall clock the only sound. Then, quietly, so what now? What do you suggest? Consider therapy for yourself, I said, and spend more time talking about her mother with Ivy. Show her it's safe to miss her around you, that you don't need protecting from her grief. I don't know how, he admitted, his voice breaking. Every time she mentions her mom, I feel like I'm shattering all over again. That's okay, I said. It's okay to cry in front of her. It shows grief is normal, and that you miss her mom too. Over the following months, I watched the Turner family begin to mend. Thread by fragile thread, Mr. Turner started therapy, carving out time from his schedule to attend sessions twice a week. He cut back on work hours, surprising Ivy with unexpected afternoons at the park or quiet evenings at home. They established new rituals while cherishing the old, visiting her mother's grave on her birthday with a bouquet of lilies, cooking her favorite lasagna on anniversaries, and sharing stories about her openly. One evening, I found them in the living room. Ivy curled in his lap as he read from her mother's favorite book of poems. Tears streamed down his face. But he didn't hide them. "Mommy loved this one," Ivy said, wiping his cheek with her small hand. "She said it made her think of us." Ivy blossomed under this new light. Her tantrums became rare whispers of the past. And when emotions swelled, she had words for them. "Ellie, I'm feeling wobbly today," she'd say, a term we'd coined for those shaky moments of grief. We'd sit in the garden, watching the flowers bloom, and talk it through. She made friends at school, joined a dance class, her mother's passion, and even performed in the talent show, dedicating her routine to Mommy in Heaven. But healing wasn't linear, there were setbacks. Like the night a thunderstorm rattled the windows, triggering memories of the hospital vigil during her mother's final days. Ivy woke screaming, and when I rushed to her room, she clung to me, sobbing. "Don't leave me too," she begged. We wrote it out together, with Mr. Turner joining us. The three of us huddled under a blanket until the storm passed. A year and a half into my time with the Turners, Mr. Turner called me into his study again. The room felt warmer now, with Ivy's drawings pinned to the walls and a vase of garden flowers on the desk. "Ellie," he said, his tone serious but kind, "I've been offered a position in London. It's a 2-year relocation." My stomach dropped. I'd grown to love this family like my own, and the thought of separation felt like another loss. "I want you to come with us," he continued. "You've become part of our family. I can't imagine Ivy facing this change without you." "You want me to move to London?" I asked, stunned. "Wherever we go," he said. "Ellie, you saved my daughter. You saved us. This wasn't supposed to be permanent for you. But if you'll stay, we'll support your goals, your education, whatever you need." I thought of Ivy's transformation, from a fortress building girl to one who danced freely. Of Mr. Turner, who'd learned vulnerability. "I can't think of anything I'd rather do," I said, true to his word. He backed my master's in child psychology, arranging online courses and covering costs for weekend workshops. In London, our new home overlooked Hyde Park, and Ivy thrived in the change, exploring museums, making international friends. I pursued specialized training in play and art therapy, even shadowing experts at Great Ormond Street Hospital. One day, Ivy watched me prepare for a support group I'd started for grieving expat kids. "I want to do what you do when I grow up," she said. "Help kids feel better when they're sad." "What do you think I do?" I asked. "You listen," she said wisely. "You don't make them stop feeling things." At 11, Ivy's insight was profound. She still grieved her mother, always would, but she'd learned grief and joy could share space. Mr. Turner remarried a kind woman named Jordan, who embraced her role without trying to replace. Ivy suggested the marriage, even helping plan the wedding in a sunlit garden. "Mommy would like Jordan," she told me as we chose flowers. "She'd want Daddy happy." As for me, I'd found my calling not in clinics, but in the messy, beautiful reality of helping one family heal. Children labeled impossible are often just unheard, their pain manifesting as chaos. Grief has no timeline. Healing comes when we carry love forward. Ivy still has waves of missing her mother, but now she rides them with tools and support. The girl who once barricaded her room now opens her heart, knowing love is worth the risk. And the nanny who was temporary found her forever place in a family reborn from ashes. An absolutely powerful story about seeing beyond difficult behavior to the pain underneath and how sometimes the most challenging children are the ones who need us most. What do you think of Ellie's approach to helping Ivy process her grief instead of just trying to control her behavior? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you were moved by this heartwarming story about healing, family, and the power of understanding, please show your support by hitting that like button. And be sure to subscribe for more inspiring stories that celebrate the bonds we choose to create. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next.